I'm Matt.
And I'm Nate.
And this is Not Quite Religious, a podcast where a Christian pastor and former evangelical turned atheist have conversations about faith, religion, philosophy, and life while drinking coffee.
Welcome to episode 61, where we're going to talk about evil and probably solve it.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't know how you solve that one.
Yeah.
And I guess that's a weird thing for a Christian to say.
No, I mean, I think even evangelicals say there's no, until the final solution, there's no solution.
So that's the solution.
Yeah.
Is the end of the world.
Yeah. Right? I mean, that's...
So there you go. Which is same as like maybe, global warming or...
I mean, at some point we're going to go extinct.
So that's the solution.
Unless you think like predators are evil too. Just like predation in general.
Oh, I'm just talking about the end of the universe, end of consciousness,
End of humans.
end of.
I mean, there are people who I also would disagree with that say the universe is just consciousness.
Yeah,
They also own lots of candles and crystals.
there's another podcast thing, but I was having that conversation in Brattleboro yesterday about consciousness, which is one that comes up all the time.
Really?
Where I live in hippie central.
Huh.
Everybody just wants to talk about consciousness. I'm never sure if people are high or not. Well, some people,
Probably,
not everyone.
I mean, the answer is probably yes.
Yeah, and I'm just sitting there in this coffee shop having a conversation as a sober person.
When I get high, which it's legal in Massachusetts for adult recreational use.
Mm-hmm. Vermont too.
I don't want to talk about consciousness. I want to watch Parks and Rec and stare at a TV screen and not move and get fuzzy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I probably, if I ever got high, would not want to talk about consciousness.
Yeah, I'm much more likely to talk about consciousness, physics, and politics while drinking alcohol. Pot, I'm like, let's just chill and just watch something hilarious.
Yeah.
Like,
Could we do an episode where instead of...
we smoke pot?
Where we smoke pot? Like, we talk about faith, religion, philosophy, and life while smoking pot?
I don't think it would be very interesting.
No, probably not. It would be interesting... Here's where it would be interesting. A Christian pastor...
Getting high.
Getting high. Like, that part of it.
Yeah. I think that's where most people would finally say you are no longer a Christian.
That's the last straw. Not what he said about hell, not the thing he said about homosexuality or abortion. When he started smoking pot, I was done.
Hey, you haven't said anything controversial from your side of the aisle about abortion.
No?
No, I mean, you're a pro-lifer.
I don't know about that.
No?
I don't know about that. Well, those I think both of those positions are polarized and
Yeah.
they don't have very nuanced definitions.
I agree.
But
yeah, I mean, I don't see you thinking that embryos in IVF are
right.
people.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. I don't think... Yeah. I'm... By my definition, I think that I'm pro-choice, but I'm also, like, fewest abortions possible.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also pro-fewest abortions possible.
So, and I don't think everybody on the pro-choice spectrum is that.
Yeah, it's true.
So, relative to many, I'm not far enough.
Yeah.
But in relationship to evangelicalism, I think it's a choice between a doctor and a woman, not between her and her government.
Yeah.
And I think we could do... I don't know how we got an abortion.
I don't know how we got it. I'm like, oh no.
No.
Do we need to restart this entire conversation?
No, it's good. It's good. All those listeners I would be worried about, they are just gone.
They're gone.
They're done. So they're not interested in this.
Yeah.
I didn't convert you within 3 episodes.
Right.
So we're out.
You failed.
I failed. What was the point of the podcast even if it wasn't
what was
like...
even the point of doing anything if you're not converting people?
Yeah, Nate didn't get saved, so we're on episode 61.
Yeah.
And you're still an apostate.
Yeah.
And I'm a heretic.
Still a pastor. Oh, and then now a heretic, yeah.
So this podcast is, effed
Yeah.
for our still PG-13 audience. Before we move on, the coffee is Nature's Promise.
Breakfast blend.
Breakfast blend. Is this like the second or third time
We've had a few different Nature Promises because it's like the best at the grocery store nearby that I can get for a reasonable.
Yeah.
Because they have some better coffees there, but they're like $30 a pound. I'm like, I ain't got that. I ain't got that kind of money.
Yeah.
So, you know,
if I had this coffee at a diner, this is a better way to rating than put it like a number.
Where?
If I had this coffee at a diner, I'd be like, this is good. This is fantastic. If I had this coffee at like a college town coffee shop, like, what are these people doing?
Yeah.
That's what this is.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's a solid 6.5.
I'm not throwing away the bag. It's not Mary Lou's.
Dude. I threw up in the car on the way home.
I still can't tell you how disappointed I was. I remember when Mary Lou's, like, it's where we would buy our cigarettes and our coffee in the morning, and they had, like, unbelievably cute high school girls there. This was when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. Like, not...
Yeah.
Like, I was also in high school, and we would, you know, me and my best friend Phil would drive there in the morning, and we'd get our coffee, and, you know, maybe, like, a sticky donut or something like that. And it was a fantastic coffee. It was better than Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
It was, like, the first, like... What is this? A coffee shop? But they still sold lottery tickets and stuff because I think, like, early 90s, Eastern New England, the idea of a coffee shop wasn't a thing yet.
Yeah.
Right?
See, it could have been bad, but you're just comparing it to, like, every other coffee you've ever had. You're just comparing it to Folgers and Maxwell House.
That's possible.
And Dunkin' at that point.
It's possible.
You're like, whoa, it was the first one that was...
Slightly above.
Yeah.
Anyway, so disappointing.
But it's also possible, probably more likely, that once it started selling in bulk, the quality went down, which is what naturally happens.
Yeah.
It tasted like an ashtray from a 1969 Oldsmobile.
I feel like it tasted like... Wow. That's a visual. I was going to stay with the coffee theme and be like, it tasted like day-old wedding coffee that had been chilled and then reheated again. But an ashtray from an Oldsmobile is...
It tasted like the actual fiberglass from a Keurig.
It was not good. Don't buy it.
Mary Lou's, it's the best. So evil.
Yeah, like you said, it's a good topic for Lent.
Yeah, it is. I was thinking about our last episode, which, you know, our listeners may have listened to yesterday. Or haven't listened to yet. And we recorded it a month ago.
Yes.
So I'm trying to kind of catch up in what it was that we were talking about. We were talking about human nature. Mm-hmm. And I think we both landed on, obviously there's a human capacity for evil.
Yeah.
But this Christian idea, and maybe we didn't talk about it in these terms a month ago, but this Christian idea that we're all like by nature
fundamentally more like murderers and
right. I think we both were kind of like, I don't know that describes a human, like an individual human's nature.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, why is there evil?
Yeah.
That's kind of where we left it. And I still think, and I think because I'm a heretic, we ended up agreeing that, like, the individual human isn't by nature a scumbag. And I still think that, but then I went away and I was like, I wish I would have said more about why individual humans still succumb to doing evil things. And I do think that that's the reason why evil permeates in the world. It's kind of like a domino effect or a snowball effect.
Yeah.
Where once one person does it, then other people have to make a decision one way or another. It forces other people into it. And then... So I still think there's some kind of... Like Christianity might put it as a predilection, a predisposition, and I don't look at it that way. But I think that there's a potentiality. There's a weakness in each and every one of us. And we could always do the wrong thing.
Always?
We could always do the wrong thing.
Oh, like we have the potential to always do the wrong thing. Okay. Yeah, because I'm like, I don't know. I never want to kill anybody. Like,
yeah, there's a situation in which you might...
Yeah, no.
And there's all...
But then we have to get into, like, ethics and morality of, like, is there a difference between murdering and killing? And clearly, if you're defending your own life and the life of your loved ones, it's different than...
Yeah.
You know, being an assassin for the Crips.
Yeah, there's also the conversation about complicity, I think, in collective evil.
Mm.
So, you think, you go to the classic example of what happened in Germany in the 30s and 40s, the Third Reich.
Yeah.
I think you and I would both say, like, the Nazi, not even, like, in the army, just, like, the guy at home eating with his wife and kids isn't, in a vacuum, all things being equal, isn't going to be like, yeah, I think we should just murder every Jew. And yet, he did, or maybe couldn't do anything, but he didn't do anything to stop that from happening.
Yeah, it's hard because we're so far away from it to act like... Yeah, it really is hard to figure out what goes on in people's minds. And, like, because especially in Europe at the time, like, there was a history since Martin Luther of vilifying the Jewish religion. So you do wonder how much regular people just didn't like them. And, like, so I would hearken it to, like, if right now the southern states could go back to segregation, would they?
Yeah.
And
that's a good question.
Right? And I tend to think they would. I think there's just, like, because I've been to the South and I've had closed-door conversations, and there is a level of innate racism down there, where they're just like, yeah, like, as a pastor, when I was traveling around, I had visited this one church, and the guy had done the first interracial wedding ever, but he had to do it outside because if he did it inside, someone was going to blow up the church, and like he was like, the FBI was like, that's a legit threat, and we don't know who it's coming from, so you should probably just have the wedding outside. This was 2010s.
Yeah.
Right? It's first interracial wedding ever. So I feel like if that part of the country was just like, yeah, we don't have to have black people in our church anymore, the vast majority would be like, cool, get the hell out. Yeah.
So that's an even better example than Third Reich, because it's less abstract.
Yeah.
It's right here. So my question would be, if we go back to what we were saying about individuals, and how many of those individuals who say are pro-segregation are making that choice gladly and as individuals? Like, they would want that even if there wasn't any pressure for them to want that. And how many of them are just, like, succumbing to a culture or peer pressure or a cult atmosphere, or just this... Because I think there's something in us that actually, I think we talked about this last time, now that I think about it, that we're like pack animals. We're tribal.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to be ostracized. There's something evolutionary in us.
Right.
So that we tell ourselves something that we may know in a deeper place is wrong. We rationalize that it's okay or right or even something we should do.
Yeah.
Because the worse than being morally wrong is to be ostracized. But even the fact that we rationalize a moral wrong into a right is evidence that there's a compass. In other words, we don't say, well, segregation is evil, but I like it.
Right.
they'll say segregation is not evil, and this is why.
Right.
This is why it's better for whites and blacks. That's how those arguments go. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's interesting. But still, it is a decision made by a collection of individuals that in the long run harms their neighbors.
And themselves. Like, that's the other thing. Is, like Germany didn't come out better after World War II for a while.
Right. Right.
Like, the South, when it was segregated, like, it wasn't going well for the South. Like, it still isn't financially and economically, for the most part, with a few states like Florida and Texas. But for the vast majority of the states that had segregation and slavery are still relying upon federal income from other states that grew economies and not relying upon segregation and slavery. So, if it was such a good thing, like, it should have bore fruits. And you kind of looking like, I don't know, we're going all over the place, because this is also like people actively choosing things that are bad for them. Like, there's so much in this sort of collective evil, whether it's segregation of the Holocaust or Palestine or Ukraine or, like it is fascinating how we sort of, like we talked about in our last episode, we both believe that at some level humans aren't, I'm not going to say innately good, I'm going to say not innately sinful. Right? Like,
I like the word malicious.
They're not malicious.
I don't think we're malicious.
Yeah. Except for the exceptions, right? Like, there are people. I was watching a documentary on El Chapo, the drug lord, and, like, it seems like he got genuine pleasure from, like, chopping people up and torturing them.
Yeah, he's just a sadist.
Yeah, psychopath. Like, there are those few exceptions. But then if people aren't mostly malicious, like, how do you get from the one person who would see that segregation as bad and that slavery is bad to the now entire state that thinks it's good? Like, where is the level at which people can make this switch?
I think it's at the level that they feel like their place in the tribe is threatened.
Okay.
That's what I was BSing about before.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but where is that level? Like, is it 10 people? Is it 1,000? Or is it just, is it different based on, what? So, like, it's probably, if you're in your basement with your friends, right? Like Eminem, I'm only joking about things you say with your friends inside your living room.
Yeah.
The difference is I got the balls to say in front of you all.
Yeah.
Right? So there's definitely, like, and I can remember in college, me and my closest male friends talking slightly differently when we were alone and it was just all of us. And not maliciously, like, just the jokes got coarser and cruder as, like, a bonding.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have said that at a bigger party, but I don't know. Like, are there just levels of malicious that you...
Totally, there's levels. And I don't know that you can quantify it, though. Because I think there are, like, people that are natural born leaders and people that are natural born followers.
Yeah.
People that are naturally more charismatic. And what happens sometimes with, like, people that are naturally more charismatic is, like, when they figure it out and they figure out that they can actually, like, influence people without even trying, then they just gain in confidence, and then they're the ones who end up feeling like they can say whatever they want, or they can get away with more than they want, because whereas the people that are more followers may never rise to that level of confidence.
Yeah.
So I think that's why there's different levels. I know, like, in my personal experience, I've grown in confidence over the years as a leader, and the way that has happened is, like, by testing the next boundary. And sometimes you get a leader, let's say, I don't know. It doesn't matter. I don't want to bring up a certain person. But...
Are we talking about Mark Driscoll again?
Yeah, okay, Mark Driscoll. That's fine. That's not what I was thinking, so that's great. So you have a certain leader who's just like, oh, I can do that? What if I do this? Oh, I can do that too? And then then it gets to the point where actually the people that are following him are more afraid of him than they are impressed by him.
Yeah.
Then it's carte blanche. And that's one way I think collective evil can happen. Is that you put people in a room, somebody's going to be the most charismatic one.
Yeah. And
somebody's going to be the least charismatic, the most given to serving and following. But again, I think you put all those people at like 3 years old, like, you know.
I don't know, 3-year-olds are assholes.
Well, there you go. See?
Like 4.
What do you want versus what do you... Yeah. Yeah, because 4-year-olds hate sharing.
See, that was our 3-year-old. Sebastian, we've just been waiting for him to turn 4, and now he's finally like, we're like, oh, thank the Lord. Like,
yeah.
It was his 3s. He was like, screw you, this way. Hit in, punch in, screaming if he didn't get his way.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, you little bucket of id. Is it? It's id, right? I don't know. I always got that id, ego, and super
I think
ego.
it is id. I'm not... Somebody
I think everyone thinks it's ego, but ego's the one that's like, no, fit in and be polite.
That's right.
And id is like, whatever you want, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, ego's good for a while because ego is that's what I'm talking about. Ego is what regulates.
Yeah.
And because you want to be liked and don't want to be well thought of. And it works so long as like the collective... as long as the collective movement is in a compassionate, good way of going, but that feels like a crapshoot.
Yeah,
it like all depends on
it depends.
The person at the top. Are they?
It also depends on was there a famine that was nobody's fault? Was there a natural disaster that set people
right?
Like historically, when you look at especially the rise of fascism and far right governments, there are predictors, but it's not it's usually complete natural disaster or a human-made disaster, completely embarrassed on the world stage. All of a sudden people are like, well, I'm not going to be embarrassed anymore, and their charismatic leader's like, yeah, you shouldn't be. Let's go show them what embarrassed is. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you've started the trek towards Mussolini, towards Stalin to
Yeah. Yeah. I think you and I come back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think that's a thing that makes sense to both of us. Because I think it explains what evil is and where it comes from. And, the need for survival is attached to the need for belonging. And these are stronger than our desires or needs to always do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, our prefrontal cortex is really new evolutionarily.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't think... So, it's also funny to talk about evil and humans because it by definition, we've stated that humans are exceptional without even saying anything, right? Because we're not talking about, orca morality.
I know where you're going, yeah.
Right? But, at the end of the day, we're just animals. So if animals are killing other animals and, we're not judging a tiger, right, for even hunting a human. And we might get rid of that tiger because we don't want other humans to get it. But we're not like, oh, that was an evil tiger. You're just like, yeah, that was a tiger. Right?
It was a tiger being a tiger.
And, orcas and dolphins are even, they can be pretty big assholes. Have you ever seen orca hunts?
Dude, orcas are, they're ruthless. They're... vicious.
They drown babies just to eat the tongue in front of the mom.
Yeah.
They smack seals around and let them think they're gonna get away.
And then
at the last minute,
it feels intentional. It doesn't feel like, oh, that's just instinct. It feels like orcas are we want these things to feel a certain way.
Or this is fun for us, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Anyway. I don't know, that was a tangent, but yeah, we reserve this word evil for humans, and all that to say, I don't think we're exceptional. There are some things that humans do better than other animals. Probably language. But even at this point, like, we've figured out that other animals are using language and communicating, and they're probably self-reflective, and they have consciousness, and they can do art, and they use tools, and, like, we're just better. Like, other animals have it, we're just slightly better. But that part of our brain that has good and evil, like, it's pretty new. You know?
You mean like in the history of human...
In the history of
existence.
Evolution, yeah. Like, you know, you start off with your, hippocampus, way in the middle of your brain.
Uh-huh.
And, like, you know, it's called the lizard brain for a reason. Like, lizards have the... So if you, like, think of the brain as, like, a everlasting gobstopper, right? Every new layer is... you start off with the center, and then you put layers, and each successive layer, essentially, this isn't perfect, is a newer part of the brain. A newer evolved part of the brain. And the prefrontal cortex isn't that old. You know, life's been around for 4 billion years, and we're looking at, like, maybe 1 million for this piece of organ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you that there's a presumption when we're talking about evil about human being special. Like that's insightful, which is something that, like, the theologians of original sin presupposed without even thinking about it.
Well, or presupposed because their book or their God told them that they were special.
Right. Well, that and coupled with the fact that, like, it did, from all appearances, look like they were.
Yeah.
The same reason people thought that the sun used to...
Right.
They're like, oh, from all appearances, we are special.
Yeah.
We can do things no other animal...
Other animals don't have boats or planes.
Reflect on whether or not we should do things or shouldn't do things that we want to do.
Yeah.
But I don't think people were thinking of it in this way of, like, tribalism that I was talking about. I think they did reduce it all to the individual.
Yeah.
So it created this problem of, like, well, why do we continue to suck? Like, why can't we just be nice and good and kind and compassionate?
Yeah.
And rather than... And the first theories as to why were theological, rather than scientific.
Yeah. Well, you know, just thinking about that, the irony is, because I think that what you're describing is more of a Western train of thought, but I think it shows up in Eastern. But in Eastern train of thought, the way that you become good is you give up your individuality and you join the oneness, which is just... Because our premise is, like, the individual at the core level is good, right? And the Judeo-Christian premise is the individual at the core level is sinful. And it seems like, you know, the Buddhist core principle is, like, oh, evil's because you're going after it. So, like, forget who you are, forget yourself, melt into the, like, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, stop desiring, stop going after stuff, just be. Like, almost like lose your individuality, and then you'll lose your evil.
I made my friend... this relates. I made my friend about 4 months ago so mad, and I actually regret saying it. Because... Well, I'm growing... By the way, Nate, I'm growing on social media. I'm getting better.
Are you?
Well, I just realized that there's no space to unpack anything you say. Like, on Facebook. but especially Twitter, too. Like...
Just say it and walk away?
You can't do that unless, like, that's your thing. Unless, like, you love trolling.
Yeah.
But my friend was talking about meditation, particularly Eastern meditation, and I made the comment, it's stupid. I just said meditation is death. Which, without him knowing everything that's in my brain, I forget people don't know everything that's in my brain at all times, the way that I know.
Right.
And basically I just said, the thing that you do for self-care and calming your nervous system and helping you cope is killing you, which isn't what I meant.
Yeah.
You know, I was like trying to have a meta philosophical conversation, but that's not what his original post was about.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's a comment on social media. But at the end of the day, isn't like losing your individuality, being sucked back into the oneness of all things, realizing that there really is no evil or suffering, it's in your mind.
It's an illusion.
Isn't that what it means to die?
Yeah.
Like, when you finally die, that's what you lose. That's all the things you lose.
Right.
You stop suffering. You stop being aware that you're an individual existing.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I actually think in the right context, the person meditating would say that and be very proud. Like, again, smoking pot, you know, in Burlington at a coffee shop, being like, man, meditation is death. And someone else being like, that's so deep.
Right. That's kind of how I meant it. I was like expecting my friend to be like, yeah, man, it's like trying to experience
It's only through death that you're really alive. Though.
Right. Like, isn't that what Jesus said when he said, lay down your cross and follow me? And I'm like, no, that's the thing. Is like, no, Christianity actually is really different.
Yeah.
Than Buddhism. You can't. And there's points of intersection, obviously.
I mean,
with all religions.
I was going to say all philosophies have points because they're
right.
Like, there are universals within our species.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. There are universals. I'm surprised to hear you say that, I think. But I don't know why I'm surprised to hear you say that.
I mean, on a biological level, it's just true, right? Like, a healthy human has certain organs, so many of them placed at the right spaces. They have, you know, a certain number of A, T, G, and C, DNA,
Okay, yeah.
And I would say even, like, you know, sort of back to the evil thing, right? If humans had evolved to just be dickheads, like complete evil people, right? Like, you see another human, you murder them. There'd be no more humans.
Right.
So the ones that survived were the ones who were like, hey, instead of murdering another human, I should work together with another human, or procreate with another human.
Uh-huh.
And, like, so then we have this drive to survive, which we've also talked a lot about. And part of that is just the way evolution has structured our brains. It's that we don't kill other humans because it's better for our genes to be passed on. That's not always true. Like, the praying mantis, like, it devours its mate right after it mates.
Uh-huh.
That's a survival strategy. It's not. If humans had evolved that way, no one would be mad when women ate their husband, right? Like, and that's kind of a weird thing to think of. But had we evolved so that the husband laid down his life for the wife, right? By literally letting her rip his head off and then eating his body to nourish the babies that she's growing inside of her.
Yeah.
No one would think that was murder. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's
what you do.
That's how you, like, let's go try to get us some."
Hey lady, make me a sandwich. I got a better idea for lunch.
Like, so I think there are universals.
Yeah.
I think what the problem is a lot of people don't understand what the universals are, especially within a theological or philosophical framework, and/or are not open to the idea that what they thought were universal might not be universals.
Yeah. So, is it fair to say you're saying that there are biological universals, but not necessarily theological or philosophical universals?
No, I think there's philosophical universals and theological with a lowercase t. Like, not every theology is going to have, you know, a sky god, essentially.
Yeah.
But I think within that, like, every single philosophy / religion has some version of the golden rule.
Okay.
Right? So, either don't do unto others what you don't want them to do to you, do unto others you would have them do unto you. Some version of that exists in every... that I know. Maybe there's one that... But, like, even in my religion and politics course at UMass, and I took a few comparative lit courses about evil too. Like all of the, everything we read, they're like, oh yeah, this culture also has a golden rule. This culture also has a golden rule. This culture also has, like, I'd say that's pretty universal.
Yeah. I wanna talk about, and this might be a different episode, because I feel like this one's coming up against, or maybe, I don't know. At some point, I just want to address, I thought it was interesting when you brought up, you just kind of skimmed over Judeo-Christianity, and even like the Western world, as believing that human beings are fundamentally evil. But there's a lot of like nuanced conversations between Jews and Christians, and then even between Christians about that.
Yeah.
And Protestants don't agree with the Catholic doctrine of original sin. And I don't think that Judaism, if there's any Jewish people listening, you could correct me if I'm wrong, you can fact check me on this, but I don't think that Judaism has the same sense of like fall, like the same idea that Adam was perfect and then he ate the fruit and now we're screwed. That's a very Christian rendering. I think the Jewish take, for the most part, on, even the Orthodox one, on the Garden of Eden is as a parabolic explanation of how consciousness affects people. So that the knowledge of good and evil means that evil's inevitable. It doesn't mean that evil is your nature, but you can't imagine a world without it. Because there's no descriptions in Genesis of Adam and Eve. Any stories about what they did before they ate the fruit.
You got a lot of midrash about it, and some of them are wild.
Yeah, but it's all speculation. In other words, like let's begin with the idea that God made all things good and then gave the universe an opportunity to differentiate. And that's the gate. That opportunity is actually like the angel that's guarding the gate to the tree of life. And Judaism, I think, sees that sort of as a neutral, in the sense it's like, if you guys are sitting around asking the question, like, how did we get in this state where things are sometimes good, things are sometimes bad? Here's a parable about that reduces that. It's not necessarily historical even. So I think that's how I would describe the Jewish perspective. And then within Christianity, you have it came to a head in the 5th century with Augustine and Pelagius, which I've been reading about lately.
So you can be an extra heretic.
Well, Augustine's idea was, which is the one that won, is that we can't be good without a outside change of our nature.
Yeah.
And Pelagius was more like what I said at the beginning. We can be evil, but we can also be good, and we can drown out evil by doing good.
Yeah, so I think what I meant, because I agree with your description of different Christian streams in Judaic and even Islam, though neither one of us talk about Islam that much, I think, because it's sort of a blind spot, but I've definitely studied more Hinduism and Buddhism than I have Islam.
Yeah.
Is that, I think, where I was going with was like, at the individual level, people can do good in sort of the Western idea, but it's the large groups that you start getting evil, right? So the way, and this might even just be Americanism, the way to maintain goodness is to have a rugged individuality and rugged individual identity. Where in some of the Eastern teachings, the way to ultimate goodness is to completely forego your individual identity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't want to have there be radio silence, but I need to mull on that. That's really... Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of even if you look at like North Korea, right? Like what they're brainwashed to believe. I mean, they're brainwashed to believe a lot of things, but the idea is if everyone just did the will of the state,
yeah,
everything would be great.
Yeah.
The problem is that you're acting as you have your own individual wants and desires and thoughts.
That's the problem.
Yes, get rid of those.
Yeah.
And we'll build utopia.
Right. Right. And so I think there's a golden mean here then, right? Because the irony about rugged individualism is it ends up being just as
chaotic, evil. Yeah.
Well, it's not even chaotic evil. It ends up being just as much of a monolith as... I mean, obviously, it's not the same thing as North Korea, but like you could do an interview with every rugged individual, Democratic, Republican. This is Jefferson's party, antebellum South, and like to a head in like 1850, they'd be like, "Yeah, black people are not equal to white people."
Right.
So you're like, "Oh, you're all individuals, but you all have the same opinion. You all do the same thing on Sunday morning."
Right.
None of the stores are open Sunday afternoon. And if anybody that's not white, doesn't look like you, doesn't talk like you, doesn't think like you, doesn't act like you, comes to your rugged individualistic state, they will be...
There's going to be a problem.
They're either going to be run out of town, lynched, have their house burned down. So believing in rugged individualism, believing in the ideology, which may be the problem, is the ideology. Ideology in general actually leads to the same kind of totalitarianism that it's meant to avoid.
Yeah.
So the middle is like realizing that we are both important.
Yeah.
As it's both things are true. Like it's really important to understand that we're individuals in a collective, and that we don't exist morally outside of a collective.
Yeah. Well, and I think you don't even have to, for the individualism, I don't even think you have to go to like super rugged antebellum South. I think even today, like if libertarians got their way, I'm not picking on you libertarians, but I am. So Ron Swanson, we've been watching Parks and Rec, right?
Yeah, it's a perfect example.
Like if he had his way, like the world wouldn't function. So libertarians are always like, oh, we shouldn't tax the rich more. We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't. I'm like, dude, like companies use our roads. They should pay for that, right? Like, and like they're like, oh, we shouldn't pay taxes. Like, there's a whole movement that like taxes are illegal. Okay, whatever. Clearly, they're not because we pay them. But let's pretend for a minute that everyone stopped paying their taxes. Okay, so now we don't have any public works. We don't have water. We don't have fire. We don't have police. We don't have the military. Right, so Republicans want to cut taxes, but you don't want to get rid of the military, and Democrats don't want to have the military, but we should want like you got to pay for that stuff. And so what we do as individuals is we come together in a society and we're like, all right, everyone throw in $1, and Joe's going to be our policeman, and he's going to make sure that like other people don't come into our tribe and kill us. And if you go full rugged individualist, there is no Joe. You're back to nature, which is nasty, brutish, and short, because everyone's looking out for each other, for their own selves, and making sure that no one's killing. Like, it's chaos. I don't know if my rants this morning are making sense.
Well, that one's pretty broad, and if we have any libertarian listeners, I mean, I've been in conversations with libertarians before, and I know that they hate it when you say there would be no roads and all that, what you just said. And they say, no, we just come together and build them. But like, then you think, well, what if somebody sleeps in one morning and you guys agreed to meet at 8:00 and they're just like, I'm not coming until noon. And you needed them for whatever reason because they're the only one that had the hammer or something. You know what I mean? At some point it breaks down when what you need is a governance.
Right.
You need accountability. You need a way to enforce for the sake of what? The tribe, because it takes a tribe to build a road. He can't just have like one guy.
Right.
Who's he building the road for? Just himself?
Right.
No, but the community. So it's like, how limited should government be is the question. Because the answer isn't, there is no government.
Right. Right, yeah, it has to be somewhere between there's no government in North Korea.
Right. So it's just how limited. Like, what's its role? And I don't think most libertarians are like anarchists, but
Some that I know kind of are. They're like, I don't know, let everything. I'm like, yeah.
The Christian libertarians I know seem to, and I think that I'm putting them on this. They probably won't accept this, but it seems to me like the only societies you could trust are small, communal, farming Christian communities.
I mean,
That's like what the world should be.
I would almost agree with them. I think small communities. So, like, even when Jefferson bought the new Louisiana Purchase, like, the founding fathers were terrified that our country was going to get too big. They're like, this whole republic thing doesn't work when you get really large.
Yeah.
Right? And clearly it's a failed experiment at this point. Like, we got too big. Sorry.
I don't know if it's
I'm
failed.
just dropping all the politics stuff. But I would tend to agree that I don't think they have to be Christian, but I think small communities are where it's like the sweet spot where you don't see crime because like everybody knows each other, everyone's there to help. It's not big enough that you have anonymity. So if you're stealing from someone in New York City, you don't know them, right? But if you're in a town with 150 people, like that's Bill, and you're stealing from Bill, and you know that's gonna like hurt his kids. So, like there's a drive there, and I think those are the communities that humans were designed to work in, and probably where you see the absolute least amount of evil. Completely.
I'm just thinking of those stats that say like you're more likely to get robbed by somebody that you know.
Also fair.
Than that. Which is like a motivation for people to not volunteer and get to know the.
But the question is like, we probably are coming up on time. Is that because of the way our society is designed? Because I know lots of people, I'm close with very few. Where if I was only in community with 150 people,
right,
which is like the number that they say, like this is the most amount of friends you get. And they were all together too, right? So like the way you get robbed by someone you know is they're either brand new into your community and you like let them in too early. I guess there's always like the son who's stealing drug money from their mom, but
yeah,
I don't know. Just if there were only 150 people, who's Johnny getting the drugs from? Like, there's just
yeah, right.
There's a lot less places, I guess.
That's a good point
to hide.
Yeah, I was just thinking that stat when you were talking. I also recognize
I mean, it's true of all crime, right?
There's a ton of variables.
Like, you're afraid, like, kidnapping, sexual assault, murder, like,
right.
All of them. Like, the myth of the serial killer stranger, like, they're there, but you're not getting killed by Bundy. You're getting killed by your spouse who came home drunk and was really upset.
Yeah.
Like,
yes. Yeah. That's right. Radio silence, woohoo.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if this whole episode is coherent.
I think this is a great episode.
Okay.
I don't think it has to be like a narrative. I think if it gets people thinking and hopefully like respond with their own kind of. I think you're just feeling tired.
That's possible.
And not, cause from my end it was like.
Okay, that's good.
Well, but I felt articulate this time, so.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't been. That's all right.
Whatever glasses we were wearing. What were you saying about? Because I derailed it with that little stat, but you were making a really good point about, how it's easier to it's like easier to govern small communities.
Yeah.
That it's easier to hold people accountable in smaller communities. and
it's easier to shame people in small communities.
It's easier
which kind of goes back to the big, like, why did people who weren't into slavery or into Nazism go with it? Because they were afraid of being shamed and getting kicked out of the group. Right? Shame is really powerful.
Right. Totally. And I think ironically that isn't necessarily individualism.
Yeah.
Even though the libertarians who want those kinds of communities talk a big game about individualism. So I don't think we have it's like a word that we use. Like, we're all special. Mr. Rogers told us that we were, and so we're all unique and beautiful in our own way. And we have this kind of myth of the individual, but we're all expressing ourselves through how we've been affected by a community.
Well, and try living by yourself.
You can't.
Like, even our children, like my oldest son just turned 15, and I'm like, you'd probably make it by yourself, but you're still an idiot. You know what I mean? Like you can't. Like, a horse's mom dies 6 months in. It's like, oh, that was traumatic. I'm a horse.
Yeah.
Dupe it out. A human's mom dies 6 months in before. You're like, nope. And you're going to die too, baby.
Oh, no.
And the baby doesn't even know any better because it doesn't, can't. So I'm just, we are on our base, like a communal. There is no such thing as an individual in some ways.
Right. Right. Like, I know it's fiction, but we'll turn a volleyball into a person and call him Wilson.
Yeah. Yeah.
And be really devastated when he floats away.
And the true stories of people that do get stranded, they're all like, yeah, I made it because this rock was my friend or my pet or...
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not fictional. You busted out the true story.
True story.
Any last words?
Whoa, we're back to the death thing?
Oh, no. I just meant for the episode. Meditation is death, man. Death is...
just one final observation.
Death is sweet relief.
We've been watching a lot of Parks and Rec as we finished Breaking Bad, and we're like, we need a lighter show, and Shirley had never watched Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
But she saw season 1, and she's like, it was okay. I'm like, you gotta get past season 1.
Yeah, season 1's not
I was
good.
like, they have a gym character, they realize that this isn't an office set, I was like, they go so hard left.
Yeah.
So we've been watching. He went to meditation with Chris. Is that his name? Rob Lowe's character.
Yeah.
And Ron's like, no, I didn't meditate. I didn't have a single thought go through my head for 6 hours. I just sat there blank. I don't know what these other fools were doing. And he's telling Chris, he's like, yeah, I don't know. I just turned my brain off and didn't think of anything. He's like, how did you do that? He's like, I don't know. So he's like saying at this meditation place that he's not meditating, when in fact he's hit ultimate Zen and he doesn't even know it.
It's brilliant. I love that show.
Oh man, it's so good. It's so good.
I can't watch comedies by myself.
No,
I don't know why.
you should watch.
It's a detriment.
I watch it.
I would, but if I rewatched it again, I would rewatch it with Rachel, my wife.
Yeah, no, I'm saying you guys should.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Because I don't know what it is.
I think that's.
I can cry by myself.
Yeah, I feel that.
Be scared by myself. I can be, dramas. Give me all the feelings that I'm fine having by myself, but I don't like to laugh by myself.
Yeah, I feel that. I don't. My go-to is not when everyone else is in bed.
Yeah.
I never think oh, I love Parks and Rec. Let me watch it by myself. But with Shirley, I'm like, oh, let's watch this funny show together. And I don't know. Maybe there's something communal about that too.
If you watch Breaking Bad again, if you ever rewatch it, imagine it as a black comedy. Because I think that might be what it is.
Huh.
When you start to really think about the premise, It's absurd.
Yeah. This teacher in a year and a half becomes the drug lord of southern Arizona.
Of the world. They're
yeah, right, because they're shipping it to Germany.
It's like, it's funny. And then even the little stuff in between, you're like, all of this is absurd.
Well, when we finally watched the last episode, because I agree, I was like, wait, all of these seasons were like 6 months? Because I think it's a year and a half. I think it's like 18 months, because they have the baby. She's pregnant in the beginning, right? And then it's like a 2-year-old at the end.
Right.
Like, and for a long time, he's in New Hampshire by himself. So, like, the whole action of Breaking Bad takes place in a very short period of time.
Totally. That's what I was just about to say. Like, you say, like, it's like 18 to 20 months, but like 6 months are in New Hampshire. Yeah. And there's no story there.
Right.
They go right from, oh, now you're in this cabin, and this guy's been coming visiting him for the last 4 or 5 months or whatever, and he grew a big beard.
Yeah.
In that time. There's no episodes where... So, most of the growth from, dejected...
In the desert in an RV.
In an RV, yeah. Like, middle-aged man to, drug lord kingpin. Relatively short period of time.
6 months. You take El Pollo like that?
Yeah.
No, 6 months in, you're not... Anyway. Yeah, maybe it is a comedy. Ron Swanson, any final words?
I love Ron Swanson. I can't decide what my favorite character is on that show. But it's between Ron and Tom and Chris. But
Andy.
I like, and Andy's, they're all great. They're all great.
I know.
Everybody loves Ron. My kids love Ron.
You can't not love Ron.
Because the way that he talks. He just, nobody they know talks like that.
Yeah. I would like all your bacon. I'm going to stop you. Because what you heard is, I want a lot of bacon. And what I actually said was, I want all of your bacon. That was... one of the other episodes, they're like sitting there and he goes, I think I will take that third ribeye.
Yeah. I think my favorite Ron Swanson line is, capitalism. How God decides who is smart and who is poor.
Is that when he's teaching the little girl?
No, that's when he's the coach in the basketball team.
Yeah.
He's got Ron Swanson's hierarchy of manliness, I think.
That's amazing. I'll let you finish this one out.
Oh, I was trying to let you finish it out, and then we got on that thing about Breaking Bad. Meditation is good for you. That's what I want to say. And also, it's death. And I prefer prayer.
Sounds great. Have a good week.